What I didn't know was that behind her smile, Sarah had been carefully weaving a web of lies, and I was the prey. My best friend tricked me into betraying my husband, then she married him and left me with nothing. Jennifer caught up with her former schoolmate Sarah over lunch at a cafe, an outing that garnered some attention from onlookers as they enjoyed their meal on the outdoor terrace. Jennifer apologized for being out of touch, explaining that finishing her doctoral studies and her recent wedding had kept her quite occupied. She was nearing the completion of her degree and mentioned she was looking forward to a short break before diving into job hunting. Sarah asked about Jennifer's married life, expressing a hint of jealousy over her stable relationship with Mark. Jennifer admitted that while Mark was wonderful, his focus on growing his business left little time or money for leisure activities. Sarah reassured her, saying that Mark's hard work was for their future and acknowledged the financial strain of paying for graduate school. Jennifer, feeling the lack of social excitement, confided that she missed going out and having fun, unlike her classmates who frequented parties and bars. Sensing there was more, Sarah asked if someone else had caught Jennifer's eye. Blushing, Jennifer admitted that she was attracted to a first-year student named Jake, who often complimented her looks and academic performance. Sarah tilted her head and said, "I don't think Mark would be too thrilled to hear about that. It's just harmless flirting, it doesn't mean anything." "But you're right. Mark is pretty traditional about these things. That's why I'm not going to tell him," Jennifer replied, shifting in her chair. "I can't help but remember how much fun I had before getting married. I miss dating different guys and going out." "You need to be careful," Sarah warned. "You've got a great husband, and you don't want to risk losing him. Mark would never tolerate you straying, and if anything ever happened, there would be plenty of women eager to comfort him afterward." I know, Jennifer sighed. "Honestly, I want to be with him and start a family, but I just want to have a little fun before things get too serious." She lowered her voice and leaned in closer. "Remember the guy I told you about? He invited me to go with him to California for spring break. If I could do it without Mark finding out, I'd probably say yes." She leaned back and laughed dismissively. "But it's just a fantasy. It could never happen." Sarah sat back and looked at Jennifer thoughtfully. After a moment, she nodded as if she'd made up her mind. "Don't be so sure. I know a way you could do it, and get away with it," Jennifer gasped, feeling a mix of disbelief and excitement. "You're joking." "How? Are you sure you want to risk your marriage to fun? If I knew Mark would never find out, why not?" "But you're just teasing me, Sarah. There's no way I could pull something like that off." "There is, and it's actually pretty simple," Sarah began, counting on her fingers. "First, create a new email account with a fake name, like a friend. Use this account to send Mark an anonymous email claiming his wife is having an affair. I'd tell him I'm having an affair. That's crazy." "Why would I do that?" Sarah continued calmly. "You'd say that Jennifer is involved with someone Mark doesn't know and can't easily check out. But that would just make him suspicious of me." "Exactly. But when he can't find any evidence of this mystery man, he'll have to confront you. And that's when you act really upset about him not trusting you. Get so mad that you call for a break in the marriage. Doesn't your mom live in California?" Jennifer was taken aback by the sudden change. Yes, why? Perfect. While you're angry, tell Mark you're going to California for spring break to stay with your mom and figure things out. So while he's here trying to find the non-existent man, you'll be in California with Jake, enjoying your fling." "But how do I explain this to my mom?" Jennifer asked, concerned. "You don't have to actually visit her. You don't even need to see her while you're there. But what if Mark calls her? Tell him not to. Say you need a complete break from him to sort things out. Warn him that if he tries to contact you, you might not come back at all." Jennifer stared at her friend, contemplating the plan, her face slowly brightening. "Do you know, Sarah, that might actually work. But what happens when I get back? That's easy. So by then, Mark will be missing you terribly. Since he won't find the mystery man, he'll think someone played a cruel joke on him. He'll feel awful and beg you to forgive him for doubting you. You'll forgive him, and everything will be back to normal. You'll have had your fun, and you and Mark will be closer than ever. And the imaginary guy I'm supposedly having an affair with. Or should I just make up a name? You could. But it's better if it's someone real, someone you definitely couldn't be involved with. Like someone much older, living far away, or even deceased. That way, if Mark tries to track him down, you're still safe." "Hey, I know the perfect person," Jennifer exclaimed. "There was this creepy professor from my first year. I think he left town because I never saw him again." "How about him?" "Perfect," Sarah agreed. Jennifer suddenly reached across the table and squeezed her friend's hand. "You're the best, Sarah. I'm so excited, I really think this will work." She then hugged herself and shivered slightly. "I can't wait to tell Jake." Meanwhile, Mark was at his office, frustrated. He asked his assistant, "Have we heard anything from the supplier regarding the parts we ordered?" So he returned to his desk, sinking into his chair, anxiously rubbing his forehead. If those parts don't arrive soon, we'll miss our deadline for the new product. After the assistant left, Mark checked his email, hoping for good news, but instead found a message titled, "About your wife." He opened it. "I hate to be the one to tell you, but Jennifer is having an affair with Professor Hamilton. Just thought you should know." A good friend, Mark searched the university's website and local directories, but found no one by that name. So this must be a scam, he thought. But doubt crept in. What if she really is having an affair? So he hadn't noticed any signs, but he'd been so busy with work, neglecting her. "I've been working almost 70 hours a week to get the business off the ground. Doesn't she understand him doing this for us?" he thought, feeling guilty. He tried to recall the last time they had gone out together, but gave up after going back 3 months. As his guilt grew, so did his anger. Maybe I haven't given Jennifer all the attention she wants, but that doesn't give her the right to cheat on me. We talked about the sacrifices we'd have to make when we decided to start the business, and she agreed completely. So his thoughts were interrupted when his assistant poked his head through the door. "Hey Mark, good news. The parts we needed just arrived. Thank goodness. Let's get them unpacked and sent to the shop right away," Mark said, feeling a bit relieved. After the assistant left, Mark took a deep breath. "Well, that's one problem solved," he chuckled ruefully. "Now I can spend more time worrying about my wife." After searching online with no results, Mark leaned back, contemplating the possibility of an affair. If Jennifer is involved with someone from the university, maybe the name was wrong or just not listed. He found the university's human resources number and inquired about Professor Hamilton. Secretary checked and confirmed that there was no Professor Hamilton at the business school or any other department. When Mark asked if the professor could have been on staff previously, the secretary informed him that she could only confirm current faculty due to university policy. But frustrated, Mark called the dean of the business school but got nowhere, learning nothing new from the administrative assistant. Mark's head was pounding. "I need a drink," he muttered after hanging up. But then he had an idea and picked up the phone again. "Hi Sarah, it's Mark. Could you meet me after work at that new bar on 5th Avenue? I have a problem and could really use your advice. I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. You can. Great. See you at 6. Before leaving, he checked his email one more time, still no new messages from a good friend. So when Mark arrived at the bar, he saw Sarah sitting in a quiet corner. She had a glass of white wine and a pint of his favorite beer waiting for him. He walked over and kissed her on the cheek. "Thanks for the beer, and more importantly, for coming tonight. I really need to talk." After he sat down, she took a sip of her wine and looked at him intently. "All right, Mark, what's going on? Is there an issue with the business?" "Business is fine. So not sure where to start," he said, staring at his beer for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you happen to know a Professor Hamilton from the university?" She shook her head, confused. "Hamilton? I've never heard of him. Why?" Mark sighed and handed her a printout of the email. "I received this today." She quickly read through it, gasped, and then read it again. Looking up at him with sympathy, she said, "Oh, Mark, no wonder you didn't want to discuss this over the phone. What do you think about it?" "I don't know what to think, Sarah. I can't believe it's true, but I also can't just ignore it. I spent the whole afternoon trying to find out who this Professor Hamilton is, but I ran into dead ends at the university. I'm at a loss for what to do next. I can't afford to hire a private investigator, and I don't have time to investigate it myself. That's why I needed to talk to you. You've been a great friend to both Jennifer and me. So what do you suggest?" She took another sip of her drink and gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. "What you're really asking is whether I think Jennifer is having an affair. I can't give you a definite answer. On one hand, I haven't seen or heard anything that makes me think she's been unfaithful. So on the other hand, I haven't seen much of her recently," she said thoughtfully. Mark looked distressed as she continued. "There are people who like to cause trouble, and this could be one of those situations. Or maybe you have business rivals who want to distract you with marital issues. There could be other explanations I haven't considered. What's clear is that you can't just ignore this and hope it disappears. You're a firm believer in fidelity, and any hint of a problem will bother you. If you don't address it, the doubt will harm your relationship with Jennifer just as much as an actual affair would." Mark nodded slowly. "You're right, Sarah. If I don't show this to Jennifer, it will affect how I act around her, and in the end, it will drive us apart, just as if she were actually cheating on me." He got up and gave Sarah a hug. "Thanks for helping me think this through, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you. So you know I care about both of you, Mark. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know." He nodded gratefully and headed for the door, with Sarah watching him as he left. When he got home, Jennifer was waiting for him. "Where have you been, Mark? I tried calling, but you didn't answer." He didn't answer her question. Instead, he took her hand and led her to the couch. "I need to show you something, Jennifer." It's really upset me. She sat down next to him, looking nervous. He handed her the printout. I got this in an email today. Can you tell me anything about it? She quickly read it and then, to his shock, jumped up and started shouting. So you think I'm cheating on you? I can't believe this. You get some lousy accusation from an anonymous friend, and now you're ready to accuse me of cheating. No, honey, I wasn't accusing you of anything. If you weren't accusing me, why did you show me this awful lie? She demanded, crumpling the printout and throwing it at him. And this feels like a knife to my heart. You trust some coward who won't even sign their name more than you trust me. She grabbed her purse and stormed to the front door. I can't even look at you right now. I'm going out, and I don't know when I'll be back. She slammed the door as she left. Moments later, Mark heard the roar of her car's engine and the screech of tires as she drove away. Damn it, I didn't expect that, he groaned, sinking back onto the couch and holding his head in his hands. As he sat there, Mark's first thoughts were defensive. Why did she react so strongly? I didn't accuse her, I just showed her what someone else said, but he knew the answer before he finished the thought. But if Jennifer had handed him that note, he would have reacted the same way. But what was I supposed to do? To print and everything is fine. Sarah was right, I couldn't just ignore the email. It wouldn't have been fair to either of us. Despite spending the rest of the evening replaying the situation in his mind, he was no closer to figuring out what to do. He knew he needed to talk to Jennifer, but he couldn't decide what to say. All he knew was that he wanted her to come home so he could try to make things right. To Mark, feeling emotionally drained, was tired but resolved not to go to bed until Jennifer came home. After waiting for another hour, he eventually lay down on the sofa and quickly fell asleep. Sometime after midnight, he was jolted awake by the sound of the door opening. As he sat up groggily, Jennifer walked into the living room, glaring at him with her hands on her hips. Jennifer, we really need to. I don't want to talk about this right now, she interrupted sharply. So you can stay on the couch tonight, and we'll discuss it in the morning. Without waiting for a response, she turned and headed down the hall to their bedroom. When he heard the door slam, he sighed and lay back down on the sofa, hoping to fall asleep again. It took a long time. Mark usually got up early to get to the office before everyone else, although his internal clock woke him at the usual time. He felt he should wait for Jennifer to come out so they could talk. He made a pot of coffee and sat down with his laptop to read the news while he waited. It wasn't until almost 800 that Jennifer came into the kitchen, pulling her suitcase behind her. Mark was surprised and asked, "Where are you going, Jennifer?" "I thought we were going to," before he could finish, she held up her hand to stop him. "This has been a huge shock, Mark. It makes me question our whole marriage. I need some time alone to think about what happened. Since spring break starts tomorrow, I'm going to drive to California to visit my mother." She glared at him angrily. "I plan to stay there all week and return in time for classes the following Monday. So while I'm gone, I don't want to hear from you. I need this time for myself. Don't call me, don't call my mother, and don't call my mother's house. Do you understand?" He nodded, feeling helpless. "I mean it, Mark. If you try to call, I might not come back at all. Got it?" He nodded again. "Fine," she said flatly and walked out the door, dragging her suitcase behind her. After she left, Mark sat there in shock for a few minutes. Eventually, he went to the bathroom to change clothes. So then he gloomily drove to work. When he arrived at the office, there was some good news. So assistant had taken the initiative to distribute the missing components to the right places on the production line, and testing was going well. At least the business isn't falling apart today. Unlike my marriage, Mark thought to himself with a hint of bitter acceptance. So that afternoon, while he was working on a spreadsheet, his phone rang. It was Sarah calling. "I was worried about you, wanted to check in. How did things go with Jennifer last night?" "Oh, it's a long and sad story," he said, sounding downcast. "Oh ho, that doesn't sound good. Do you want to meet up for a drink and talk about it?" "That would be great, Sarah." "Same place?" "Okay." He checked his email one more time before leaving, but there was still no new message from a good friend. So when he walked into the bar, Sarah immediately noticed the dark circles under his eyes. "Oh, Mark, you look like you didn't get much sleep. What happened?" He took a big gulp from his beer and began to explain the argument from the night before and Jennifer's departure in the morning. Sarah listened with a mix of sadness and regret. "Oh, Mark, I feel awful. You took my advice and it turned out to be the wrong thing." "No, Sarah. I've thought about it a lot and I still believe it was the only option. I didn't expect Jennifer to react so angrily, but I couldn't just ignore that email and pretend nothing was wrong. Now all I can do is hope she calms down and we can sort things out when she gets back." "That's kind of you to say, Mark, but I still feel responsible for what happened. So, what are your plans for the rest of the week?" "I'm not sure, Sarah. I don't see how Jennifer and I can move forward without talking about what happened. Maybe I'll wait a few days and then try to call her." "No, Mark, don't do that." She already thinks you don't trust her. If you try to contact her after she told you not to, it'll just confirm her suspicions. Yeah, I guess you're right, but I feel so helpless. I don't know how to find out who sent that email. The only thing you can do while she's away is keep trying to figure out who Professor Hamilton is. That's a good idea. So if I can find him, he might be able to explain things. In the following days, Mark continued investigating the anonymous email, making no progress. He then considered that Hamilton might be an alumnus, not a faculty member. He called the Alumni Relations office, but they had no record of Hamilton. Frustrated, Mark visited the Graduate School of Business during spring break, finding the place almost empty. He asked around about Professor Hamilton until an assistant dean threatened to call campus security, forcing him to leave. Back at his office, Mark was at a loss until he received a call from Dr. Paul Mayfield, a faculty member at the Graduate School of Business. Dr. Mayfield offered to help and asked why Mark was searching for Hamilton. Desperate, Mark briefly explained his situation. Dr. Mayfield listened thoughtfully. I understand now. I overheard your questions at the school today, and the way you asked them made me think something like this might be happening. Anyway, I can reassure you that Hamilton was an adjunct professor here 2 years ago. He was a good teacher, but his class didn't have enough students, so his course was canceled, and his contract wasn't renewed. I see, Mark replied. Does that mean there's more? Dr. Mayfield added, I heard from Professor Hamilton at the start of this school year. He let me know that he had found a job at Black Hills State University in South Dakota. As in South Dakota? Mark asked in surprise. Yes, Dr. Mayfield confirmed. Also, Hamilton mentioned in that letter that he recently married his longtime partner, Harold. So that means Hamilton is exactly, Dr. Mayfield finished. Thank you for calling, Dr. Mayfield. I still don't understand why someone sent me such a deceitful email, but now I'm sure it was false. I hope this eases your mind. Can I ask one more thing? Why did you decide to contact me? I'm grateful, but I'm just a stranger to you. The professor's tone softened. I don't mind explaining. Years ago, something similar happened to me. My wife left me for someone else, so I understand how you might feel. And I was glad to help you and clear this up, but if the accusation had been true, I wouldn't have hesitated to let you know. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your help. That evening, Mark called Sarah to share the good news. I still don't know who's trying to mess with my marriage, but now I'm sure that Jennifer isn't cheating with Professor Hamilton. Are you sure you can trust Dr. Mayfield? Yes, absolutely. After the call, I looked him up and found him on the business school faculty. Has an older guy, probably in his 60s, and seems to be well regarded. I also checked Hamilton on the Black Hills website, and he's listed there. So that's good to hear, Mark. You must feel relieved. Yeah, I do. But now I'm not sure what to say to Jennifer when she comes back. That's simple, Mark. From what you told me, Jennifer didn't really give you a chance to explain. When she gets home, tell her you never doubted her. Explain that you found out about Hamilton right away and looked him up after getting the email. Because she reacted so strongly, you didn't get a chance to talk. If you handle it well, she'll end up apologizing to you. I'm not sure, Sarah. That's not exactly how it happened. She seemed to be smiling. Come on, Mark. Is it really so bad to bend the truth a little to get what you want? On Sunday, before Jennifer came back to town, she surprised Sarah with a phone call. Hey, I wanted to check in before I get home. Do you know how Mark is doing? I'm a bit nervous about what he'll find when I get there. Let me just say that you owe me big time for all I've done while you were away. Thanks to a bit of help from me and some luck, you'll be able to return to your husband with your marriage in better shape than before. Sarah then described the week's events, including Mark's discovery about Hamilton. If you handle things right when you get home, you and Mark will both apologize to each other, and everything will be back to normal. There was a brief silence. What if I don't want things to go back to normal? I don't get it, Jennifer. What are you trying to say? I just had an amazing time this past week. Jake, the guy I've been seeing, is a lot of fun, Jennifer said, her voice sounding a bit deeper, and has an incredible lover. I haven't had that many peaks in years. I'm not ready for this to end. I want to keep seeing him until the semester finishes. You've got to help me, Sarah. Jennifer, you've already taken a big risk being with this guy for a week. If you try to continue the affair here, you're really pushing your luck. Maybe, but you've got to admit your plan worked perfectly. I'm sure you can figure out a way for me to keep seeing him. Please, Sarah, he's really amazing. I had a feeling something like this might happen. There was a pause. All right, Sarah said slowly. I can come up with a plan for you, but you need to realize you'll be risking your marriage with Mark. He's a good guy, hardworking, loyal, and family-oriented. Men like him don't come around often. Are you sure you want to risk all that just for fun? Jennifer laughed. You had me at, I can come up with a plan. Okay, but remember, I warned you. Here's what you need to do. Do you still have that email account you set up? Yes, you told me to keep it active. Great, you need to send another email from a good friend. This time, send it to yourself to your regular email. All right, what should the new email say? So make it similar to the first one, but this time, say that Mark is having an affair with me. What? But that's not true and Mark knows it. How will that help? It's simple. The first email accused you of cheating. The Mark found out you couldn't be unfaithful with Professor Hamilton, but he might still have doubts about you. To wait, Sarah. You said the Hamilton email would clear me with Jake, and it did. But after Mark gets this second email, he won't have any doubts left. So he's already figured out you weren't having an affair with Hamilton, and he knows I'm not involved with him. Clearly, a good friend is just lying. Which means Mark won't doubt you anymore. That way you can do pretty much whatever you want without raising his suspicions. So there was a pause on the call. Then Jennifer said excitedly, Sarah, you're brilliant. I don't know how you come up with these ideas, but you've just given me a free pass until the semester ends. Just 2 more things, Jennifer. First, make sure Mark tells me about the second email. Why should he do that? Because it helps me show that you're trustworthy and this mysterious friend is not. That's a great idea. Mark really values your opinion, so he'll take your advice seriously. What's the second thing? After you send the email to yourself, make sure to log out of the good friend account. Hey, you don't want Mark to stumble upon it. Oh no, I definitely don't want that. Actually, it's best if you stay logged out of both your email accounts when you're not using them. And you don't want Mark to find any messages from Jake either. I've told Jake not to email me, but your advice is still good. Better to be cautious. When Mark got home from work that evening, he was worried to see that Jennifer had been crying. Everything had been going well between them since her return from California. So seeing her upset was unexpected. What's wrong? What happened? He asked urgently as he went to her. Oh, Mark, it's happening again. She sobbed, handing him a copy of the email. Damn it, he exclaimed after reading the accusing message. You know this isn't true, right? Of course, Mark. I know you would never cheat on me just like I would never cheat on you. And even if you did, I know it wouldn't be with Sarah. She's such a good friend to both of us, she wouldn't do something like this. Damn it, someone is still trying to cause problems for us and I have no idea who or why. So there has to be a way to trace these emails. She looked at him uncertainly. Are you going to tell Sarah about this? Do you think I should? Yes, I think you need to. She's involved now, and it wouldn't be right not to tell her. The next morning, when Mark called, Sarah answered warmly, How are you two lovebirds today? Mark's tone was serious. We're okay, Sarah, but something new has come up that I need to discuss with you. Can we meet after work? Actually, I'm working from home this afternoon. Could you come to my apartment instead? That works for me. You'll be there between 6:30 and 7:00. When Sarah opened the door that evening, she immediately saw that Mark looked serious. What's wrong, Mark? I've been worried since your call. He shook his head. I'm really sorry, Sarah, but it looks like you're now caught up in this mess with Jennifer and me. Sarah looked puzzled. So Mark handed her the latest email. After reading it, she looked at him with frustration. So this is absurd. Absurd. We're not having an affair. I would never do that to Jennifer. I hope she knows that. She does, Mark said. In fact, she told me the same thing. Sarah shook her head in confusion. I'm glad she knows that, but what do you think is going on? I think someone is trying really hard to create problems between Jennifer and me. First, it was the Professor Hamilton warning, and now this. The only thing I can think of is that I might have an enemy, possibly a business rival. But I have no idea who it could be. Since you're involved now, Jennifer and I thought we should let you know. She nodded. I'm glad you told me, Mark. You're always so considerate. But I'm not sure what we can do about this unless the person behind it makes a mistake or does something obvious. I don't think involving the police would help. I agree, Sarah. It's really frustrating. I just want this whole mess to end and for whoever's behind it to stop bothering us. How's Jennifer handling all this? She's pretty shaken up. When I got home, she was crying. I'm not surprised, especially after the trouble the first email caused. So listen, Mark. Jennifer is probably very stressed right now with everything going on and her being so close to graduation. She's likely feeling overwhelmed. You need to take extra care of her. Do you think we should block all emails from that account? That might not be a good idea. If more emails come in, you'd want to know about them. Yeah, you're right. But how do I keep Jennifer safe? To start, if you get another email, don't tell her about it right away. Also, you should check her email on her laptop whenever you can. If she gets another email, you can forward it to yourself before she sees it. That way you can handle it without worrying her. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan, he said, standing up. I'm really sorry you've had to deal with all this. If that's your way of apologizing, don't worry about it. I care about you a lot and want to help however I can, she replied with a smile. He smiled back, feeling grateful. I should get home to check on Jennifer. He started to leave but turned back to give Sarah a hug and a kiss on the cheek. Thanks for being such a great friend. Your support means a lot to me. When Mark got home, he was happy to see that Jennifer was in a much better mood. She was even more cheerful the next morning, getting up early to have breakfast with him. This is a nice surprise, Jennifer. I don't usually get to see you before I head to work. I didn't want you to leave this morning without hearing I love you, she said, giving him a kiss. Oh, and by the way, she added, I'm going to a lecture on campus tonight. A few of the girls and I are going to grab dinner afterward, so he'll probably be home late. That's fine, Jennifer. We have plenty of leftovers in the fridge so I can eat here. Thanks, honey. You'll probably come home after my classes to drop off my stuff and change. If I don't see you then, have a good evening. So knowing that Jennifer would be out, Mark stayed late at the office. Things were finally starting to improve with the business. A major potential client was really interested in the new product samples, and Mark hoped they might place a trial order. At least that's going well. Now if I could just figure out who's messing with our emails. He was still thinking about the mysterious good friend when he got home. As he was heading toward the bedroom, he saw Jennifer's laptop left on the table. It looks like she didn't need it for her lecture, he thought. Then he remembered Sarah's suggestion. I should check if she's still logged into her email. If she is, I need to see if she's received any new messages from that creep. The laptop powered up as he opened it. There wasn't an email page open, so he clicked on the Gmail link to check if she was logged in. A window appeared, asking him to choose an account. He saw Jennifer's email, but she had logged out, so he started to close Gmail. Before he could, he noticed another account listed below her regular email, and when he looked closer, he was stunned. The account name was a good friend. What the heck, he exclaimed, staring at the screen. He tried to open it, but Google asked for a password. Not knowing the password, he closed the tab and sat down, trying to process what he had just seen. How could she have an email account with that name? I know Gmail doesn't allow duplicate usernames, so that means Jennifer must be behind those emails. Why would she do that? Why would she send me an anonymous email accusing herself of cheating? It didn't take long for the answer to hit him. It must have been a distraction. She wanted me to waste my time chasing a phantom so she could continue her affair. So another thought struck him hard. Her trip to California. When I showed her the email, she acted so upset and said she needed to visit her mom and get away from me. Now I'm wondering if she even saw her mom. He quickly pulled out his phone and dialed his mother-in-law. After a bit of small talk, he asked, Jennifer and I were thinking of visiting next month. Would that be too soon for you? Too soon? I haven't seen you both in ages. Please come whenever you can. He clenched his teeth in frustration. Great, we'll let you know when we have a firm date. After ending the call, he swore under his breath. Damn it, I wonder where Jennifer really went, and more importantly, who she went with. Then he remembered the latest email Jennifer had received. So what was that about? Damn, it must have been another distraction to keep me from noticing what she's really up to. Like going out to lectures with her girlfriends. Yeah, right? He thought bitterly. That sneaky, lying liar. He started to wonder what she was wearing when she left for the evening. So he rushed to their bedroom and began rummaging through Jennifer's lingerie. It was hard for him to remember everything she had, and he almost gave up. But a sudden suspicion hit him, so he checked for one more item, her garter belt. So it was missing. Frustrated, he also looked for the matching underwear set, but it was gone too. Out to dinner with her girlfriends. Ha, he muttered. He put everything back where it was and then returned to the kitchen table to think. So you like tricks and lies? Well, I can play that game too. He was still fuming when Jennifer came home after midnight. But he pretended to be asleep as she quietly entered the bedroom. He had to restrain himself from getting up to confront her when he heard the shower running. Who knew attending a lecture could be so sweaty? He thought bitterly. The next morning, Mark got up early and left for work before Jennifer was awake. He left a note by the coffee pot for her. Hope you enjoyed the lecture last night. I had to go in early for a meeting and might be late tonight, so don't wait up for me. Mark had a busy day, but his meetings were not with clients or suppliers. At lunchtime, he did some shopping and then went home with his purchases to make a few preparations. He had 2 more appointments in the afternoon. After finishing, he went out for dinner and a movie to pass the time. When he got home, Jennifer was already asleep, and he carefully climbed into bed without waking her. The next morning, Jennifer was surprised to find Mark waiting for her. I thought you'd be gone to work already, she said, gratefully taking the coffee he handed her. I wanted to make sure I saw you before I fly to Chicago at noon. I'll be gone a couple of days meeting with potential clients. This is new, you don't usually travel for work. When do you think you'll be back? At the earliest, not until Friday evening. And if things go well, I might stay until Saturday morning. Will you be okay while I'm gone? She flashed him a cheerful smile. Don't worry about me. I'm sure I'll find something to do while you're away. All right, just make sure you stay away from our good friend while I'm gone. Her expression turned serious. That's not funny, Mark. Sorry, you're right. It's not funny. He waved goodbye, grabbed his suitcase, and headed to his car. As he drove away, he frowned. She didn't even notice I didn't say I love you. I bet she's already planning to see her lover again. Now I just need to make sure their meeting is at our house. Instead of going to the airport, Mark drove to the university. During lunchtime, he parked away from campus and changed into jeans and a hoodie, carrying a cheap backpack. At the business school library, he hid behind a magazine rack, lit a string of firecrackers, and dropped them into a metal bin. He then wedged a door open with his backpack and left. Outside, he used a burner phone to call campus security, falsely reporting an active shooter at the business school. As the firecrackers exploded, he ended the call and left the campus amidst the ensuing panic. Mark parked discreetly in his neighborhood, observing from a distance. An hour later, he saw his wife arrive home, followed by another man. He then drove to a motel where he had booked a room. That night, he confirmed the second car was still in his driveway before returning to the motel to try and rest. So when Jennifer and Jake came out of the house the next morning, they were shocked to see Mark leaning against the door of Jake's car. "Oh my God, Jake, it's my husband," Jennifer exclaimed when she recognized him. "I thought you were in Chicago," she said, then quickly realized how that sounded. "Honey, this isn't what it looks like. Jake just stopped by to enough. Jennifer, every time you speak, all you do is lie." "So I don't want to hear anymore," Mark said with a grimace, pointing at them. "This is exactly what it looks like. I know you both spent the night here, and I have a recording of everything you did and said. So just listen." He pulled out a manila envelope and shoved it toward her. "I'm filing for divorce because of your affair. Inside the envelope is my lawyer's contact info. Get your own lawyer and have him get in touch with mine. But don't try to reach me, because after what you've done, I never want to see or talk to you again." "No, honey, don't say that. It was just a mistake, a one-time thing. We can fix this, I promise." "Stop lying," he shouted. "It's not a one-time thing. You've been with him for weeks, and it wasn't a mistake. You planned it all. I know you sent that email to distract me so you could spend spring break with him. And by the way, your mother's been wondering why you haven't visited her. I guess you were so busy with this guy," he said, pointing at Jake, "that you didn't even go see her." He then turned his attention to Jake. "Oh, and I almost forgot." But Mark quickly took several photos of Jake with his cell phone. Seeing what was happening, Jake scowled, clenched his fists, and moved toward Mark threateningly. And instantly, Mark reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a toy gun that looked remarkably real. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," he said calmly. "I don't want to ruin my life by ending yours, but I'd be happy to use this in self-defense if I have to." "Who? Jake said, raising his hands and stepping back. Mark turned to Jennifer with a sneer. "Looks like your boyfriend is more of a lover than a fighter." His voice then turned cold and harsh. "Get whatever you need from the house and leave. I meant what I said. I never want to see you again." "Hey, Mark, please," she cried. "I never wanted it to end like this." Ignoring her, he walked to his car while she sat on the driveway, crying into her hands. On his way to work, Mark stopped by a dumpster and threw the burner phone and the toy gun into it. "I'm glad they make these things look so real," he said with a bitter laugh. Back at his desk, Mark used his cell phone to send an email with one of the photos he'd taken. To his surprise, he got a call back just minutes later. "So this is Dr. Mayfield. Did you just send me a photo?" "Yes, Dr. Mayfield. Sorry to bother you again, but do you recognize the man in the photo? I think his first name is Jake. And is the woman next to him your wife? My soon-to-be ex-wife. She's a very attractive woman. I believe she was in one of my classes last year. I do recognize the man beside her. His name is Jake Montrose. He's one of my advisees." "Jake Montrose, that's helpful, doctor. I have some issues to resolve with Mr. Montrose. So has the one who messed up your situation?" "Yes, in a way, but my wife wasn't exactly innocent." "See, that's interesting. I'm glad I could help, though I'm sorry these didn't turn out the way you hoped." "Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your time and help, even if things didn't go as planned. Good luck, and don't lose hope. Things often work out for the best. Trust me, I've been through it and come out okay." 2 months later, Mark sat in his lawyer's office, fuming. "Have you heard from Jennifer's lawyer yet? What's the status of the divorce?" "Yes, I spoke with Martin Spencer yesterday. He sent over Jennifer's counter-proposal today. The good news is that Jennifer is no longer contesting the divorce. After Martin heard the recordings you made at your home, he convinced Jennifer not to risk having those played in court. The bad news is that now that Jennifer has accepted the end of the marriage, she's determined to get as much money from you as possible. Damn, she lies and cheats on me, and now she expects me to pay her for the trouble. It's just not fair. So, what does she want from me? Usually I'd expect a request to divide all your assets, but here there isn't much to split. You're renting your place, you don't have a retirement plan, and your savings are minimal. The only asset is your business, which is losing money. See, it seems she's betting on its failure, so she's only asking for alimony. I'm really touched by her confidence in me, Mark said sarcastically. How much alimony does she want? A lot more than we suggested. The lawyer handed Mark a document. Mark looked at it and was stunned. This is outrageous. She knows I can't afford that. If I have to pay that much each month, they'll have to sell off my business to cover it. Jennifer isn't willing to negotiate, so that's what Martin will be asking Judge Anderson for. I'm not going to just hand over that much money without a fight. We'll have to see what happens in court. Okay, Mark, I get your frustration. But remember, Judge Anderson has full authority. Whatever he decides will be final. About a month later, Mark sat nervously in the courtroom. After both lawyers presented their cases, Judge Anderson had called for a break. How do you think it's going? Mark asked his lawyer quietly. I'm not sure. It could go in either direction, or the judge might propose a compromise.
Seconds later, they were instructed to stand as Judge Anderson returned to the courtroom. After they took their seats again, the judge called the attorneys to call the bench. I assume neither side has changed their stance on the financial settlement. The two lawyers exchanged looks.
No, Your Honor. All right, before I make my decision, I'd like to ask Mrs. Smith a few questions. Martin Spencer looked surprised, but then smiled and signaled Jennifer to step forward. It'll be fine, he whispered to Jennifer. Remember to address him as Your Honor. Mark's lawyer sat down and leaned toward him. But it's usually not a good sign when the judge wants to hear more from the other side. So Mark watched with frustration as his soon-to-be ex-wife took the stand. Her suit was modestly cut, but tailored to accentuate her figure. He saw the judge watching Jennifer and muttered to his lawyer, I think we're in trouble. The judge glanced over the documents in front of him and then addressed Jennifer in the witness box. So, Mrs. Smith, it seems the only issue between you two is the amount of alimony. Your proposal is significantly higher than what your husband has offered. Yes, Your Honor. And what's the reason for the higher amount you're asking for? We're requesting the higher amount because of the length of our marriage and the fact that it'll be starting over from scratch, Your Honor. I understand. However, Mr. Smith claims his only source of income is his business, which is currently losing money. Why do you believe he can afford the amount of alimony you're asking for? Your Honor, we believe Mark has been intentionally lowering his reported income by investing more into his business. He could easily pay the alimony I'm requesting if he reduced his business investments. The audited financial statement shows that the business is losing money, Your Honor. Mark's accountants can alter the numbers to show whatever result they want. The judge raised his eyebrows. Are you suggesting the financial statements are falsified? Jennifer's attorney looked alarmed and shook her head firmly. Jennifer quickly added, No, Your Honor. Not at all. It's just that earnings can be delayed and investments increased while still following accounting rules. He's simply putting too much money into his business. Mark could feel his anger building. He leaned over and whispered angrily, What a liar. She knows that's not true. She's just trying to get as much as she can from me, no matter the impact. And meanwhile, Judge Anderson was reading through the case summary. We've mostly talked about your husband's business investments, Miss Smith. It seems he's also been investing in you, or at least in your education. If you're talking about my MBA, Your Honor, it's true that Mark paid for my tuition, but I did all the hard work. I studied day and night for the past 2 years, including last summer. And you've just graduated, correct? Yes, sir. I graduated with honors, she said with pride. The judge nodded. All right, Mrs. Smith, you can sit down now. After Jennifer returned to her attorney's side, Judge Anderson adjusted his glasses and looked at both parties. Based on the evidence, I'm going to grant Mrs. Smith the full amount of financial support she requested. The Mark grimaced while Jennifer leaned over and hugged her attorney. But the judge continued, this financial settlement will provide Mrs. Smith with enough monthly support to live comfortably, without working for the foreseeable future. However, since she has just earned an advanced degree that should help her secure a good job, I'm only awarding her alimony for 6 months to encourage her to use her education. 6 months? You can't do this, Jennifer yelled. I can, and I have, the judge responded sharply. He then hit the gavel on the block. Next case. I am free. Her attorney quickly pulled Jennifer away from the judge, even as she continued to argue about the decision. It wasn't until a bailiff appeared that she finally stopped. I only have to pay alimony for 6 months. I can handle that, Mark told his lawyer as they got up to leave the courtroom. How about that, his lawyer said, sounding pleased. I thought we were going to lose when the judge went with her demand, but it seems he wasn't impressed with how she was trying to drain you. So not many husbands fare this well in divorce court. I wonder why he went easy on you. Do you think the fact that she didn't challenge the adultery accusation played a role? The judge isn't supposed to consider that when deciding on the financial settlement. Mark glanced back to see Jennifer still arguing with her attorney and smiled. So well, whatever the reason, I'm happy with the outcome. Just then, a hand grabbed his arm, and Mark turned to see an older man he didn't recognize but who seemed vaguely familiar. I wanted to introduce myself, the gray-haired man said. In Professor Mayfield, Mark shook his hand firmly. Professor, it's a surprise to meet you in person. Thanks again for all your help. What are you doing here today? The older man smiled. After our conversation, I took an interest in your case and decided to come see how it ended. It also gave me a chance to chat with an old friend, Judge Anderson. He shook Mark's hand again. I'm glad things worked out for you. If you need any more help, just let me know. He winked. We divorced guys need to support each other. As the professor walked away, Mark watched him go, thinking, I wonder. He then shook his head. Out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw Sarah in the crowd, but when he looked directly, she was gone. 3 months later, Jennifer dialed a familiar number on her cell phone, and after the call was answered, she nervously said, Hi Sarah, it's Jennifer. Jennifer, what a surprise. I haven't heard from you since you moved to California. How have you been? Honestly, it's been a tough few years. That's actually why I'm calling. I really needed to hear a friendly voice, of course. What's going on? Are you working now? That's part of the problem. I thought having an MBA would make it easy to get a good job, but down here, employers care more about experience than degrees. Most of the positions I was offered were just internships or trainee roles. Oh, that sounds frustrating. So what are you doing now? After the alimony stopped, I got pretty desperate. I even took a job as an administrative assistant, but it was terrible. Now I've started a new career in financial counseling. That's actually why I called. I'd be happy to review your finances if you're interested. Many people overlook that kind of thing. There was a brief pause. Oh, Jennifer, I'd love to help you, but my finances are in good shape now, and I feel confident about the future. I don't really need any help. Sorry, that's okay, Sarah. I hear that a lot, but I thought I'd ask. It's tough to get started in this business. I even had to move in with my mom to cut down on costs. You're living with your mom? What happened with you and Jake? Don't even mention that jerk's name. We broke up just a few months after moving here. Broke up. What happened? Oh, Sarah, it was awful. Jake dropped out of school before finishing his MBA. His advisor rejected his thesis and told him he'd have to start over. Jake got really resentful and decided not to go back. He refused to find a job and just spent his days playing video games and drinking. Eventually, he started taking his anger out on me. It got so bad that I had to call the police on him. Oh, Jennifer, that sounds terrible. You're probably better off without him. And on the bright side, now you're free to meet new people, go out, and have fun like you wanted to before. I remember how much you missed that while you were married. Jennifer sighed. Going out to clubs and parties costs money, Sarah, and I don't have much extra these days. Honestly, when I do go out, it's not as glamorous or fun as I imagined it would be. I remember a friend warning me that there are a lot more losers than good guys out there. She paused, and when Sarah didn't respond, Jennifer changed the topic. But how about you, Sarah? How are you? Are you seeing anyone special now? Actually, things have changed a lot for me, Jennifer. I'm getting married next month. Married? That's amazing. Who's the lucky guy? Do I know him? Yes, you do. It's Mark. Mark and I are engaged. My Mark? You're marrying my Mark? That's not right. I'm afraid it is. We're having a small ceremony in the backyard of our new house, and then flying to Paris for our honeymoon. No new house. Honeymoon Paris? Mark can't possibly afford that. My situation isn't the only one that's changed dramatically, so has Mark's. The same month you moved to California, he finally got that big order he'd been chasing. So business really took off after that. His new product is exactly what the car industry needed. Plus, earlier this year, Mark got a huge offer from a major manufacturer to buy his business. He accepted, and the deal is closing next week, so you don't need to worry about our financial future. Jennifer could only stammer, but Sarah continued, her tone now sharper. You know, Jennifer, all of that could have been yours if you'd been happy with what you had. I warned you from the beginning that you were risking everything with your affair. I also told you there would be women ready to take advantage if your marriage fell apart. Except you were the one who encouraged me. You're the one who helped me with the Jennifer's voice rose in shock. Oh my God, Sarah, it was you. You planned the whole thing from the start. I just mentioned a small fantasy and you manipulated me into acting on it. You tricked me into thinking I could have an affair without consequences. Really, Jennifer, you're overreacting. I didn't force you to do anything you didn't want to. I just gave you enough rope to hang yourself. I can't believe this. You must have been the one who told Mark about Jake. You're smarter than that, Jennifer. So think about it, if I had told Mark, he would have wondered how I knew, which wouldn't have been very smart. I did tell you not to delete your secret email account, and I suggested Mark check your email. I use Gmail all the time, so I was pretty sure he'd see what I expected. So no, Jennifer, I didn't tell Mark about your affair. I just set things up so they worked out the way I wanted. I can't believe this. I trusted you. I thought you were my friend, Sarah laughed. You know what they say, all's fair in love and war. You won't get away with this, you nasty woman. It'll make sure Mark finds out what you did and how manipulative you are. He'll definitely cancel the wedding once he knows the truth. I'm sorry, Jennifer, but I have to end our conversation now. Mark and I have plans tonight, and I want to look great for him. And don't bother calling back, he'll be blocking your number as soon as we hang up. You deceitful backstabbing. 3 months and 1 day later, Sarah greeted Mark with a loving kiss when he got home from work. Mark kissed her back and then pulled out a piece of paper from his jacket. You won't believe who emailed me today, Lydia. Oh, really? Sarah said casually. I'd almost forgotten about her. What does she want now? Mark looked at his fiancée with no emotion. She wrote to warn me about you. She claims you planned everything to break up Lydia and me. It's pretty out there. Can I see it? Sarah asked. He handed her the printout. She read it quickly, then handed it back with a smile. Poor Lydia. She might have made her jealous story seem a bit more believable if she'd done one more thing. He looked at her curiously. She winked at him. She should have signed it, a good friend. It took him a few minutes to stop laughing.